right, welcome to the Cartoonist, Kayfabe, RingSide Seats Comix Symposium for another month. My name is Eli Schwab. I am joined as always by co-host Ray Carcases, Craig CK, and Rick Lopez, who's there in the dark of night, who will be joining us in one moment. Before we get into our first guest, let's get some quick host plugs in there. I've been working on my hair plugs, getting my hairline back. That's my plugs for the week. What up, Ray? What you working on?
Videos, and I started a Substack.
Oh, really?
Well, like everybody kept talking about, how is this going to impact comics? And you have celebrities like, oh, why did I do a Substack? And I'm looking at it, I'm like, it's a newsletter that you hope people will pay you for. It's like a blog. It's like no big. They're paying people for it, so I would do it too. But I thought the goof would be like a nobody doing one on comics, because it's just a blog. It's free, so why not? So nice, so I'm gonna try to just do it once a week, and and hopefully not put too many people to sleep.
Nice. All right, sweet. Well, put your link in the chat here, and we'll all join you. Craig, what you working on, man?
Same old stuff. Liefeld, Kirby Bot. That's about it, man. Staying busy.
Nice, dude. How close are you and Browers on that Life of Liefeld book?
Pretty close, I think.
Nice.
Definitely more than halfway for all the art. He's got to reach out to the letterer, and we have someone to color it. So we're hoping to have some colored pages done for people to take a look at.
Sick, dude. I'm super excited to see that.
All right.
Oh, what'd you say?
Spending that time with them face to face was valuable. So
with Browers, getting to draw and throw ideas back and forth. Sweet. All right. I actually do have plugs this week. My hair plugs aren't. That was just a joke. You guys, look at this. This is strong. Anyway, the brand new Cosmic Lion Productions book Arcane is on the shelves right now. You can get it at cosmiclionproductions.com. It's a YA horror novel written by Steele Filipek, and with some tones by our friend Ben Granoff down there. And it's about a young man who finds himself stuck with the Oculus and thrust into a world of zombies and horror and perhaps a future and a past unknown. All right, and quickly, let's hit up Rick Lopez, who really has a fire new book that is burning up
everyone?
The postal service.
Guys? Rick Lopez. So I've been pimping my book, The Power. This is the first issue. This is a 4-issue limited series about a boy creating his own comic, only to discover a realm beyond space and time within his own mind. Well, last Tuesday, I just got in my second issue, so I've been getting those out to everybody. And this is just further taking it into the rabbit hole with my character. Every other weekend, myself, Craig, Eli, a bunch of us work on Next Panel Press, and we each do our own strips. With all my book orders, I've been handing out my Cosmic Cat mini comics. This collects the first 7 strips in there, so it's pretty cool. It's got an ad for the eventual collected book. I'm about to put out the 15th one, so this gives you about halfway point of where we're at right now. You can get all of that on my Big Cartel /Doomdazed. You could follow me on Instagram at Doomdazed, and
hell yeah. All right, we're gonna talk to Rick more later about that. But right now, without further ado, I'd like to introduce our big guest for the day, our first big guest, and that is Brett Parson, artist of such amazing books as King Tank Girl, various other Tank Girl, Cantankerous, Tank Girl, King Tank Girl books in the past. Mondo Blitz is his sketchbook that you can get. I believe some are still available. blitzcadetstudios.com. An amazing artist. Hey guys, also featured in the Ween Zine if you're interested in such a thing. A free sticker comes with each issue. Plug, pimp. What up, Brett? How's it going, man?
Not too bad. How about you?
Pretty good. Good to finally meet you face to face. We've been chatting for quite some time, but it's good to see you, man. How's things going? Sorry, I'm trying to direct here. All right.
Yeah, I mean, just same old thing, working, watching kids, sleeping, working, watching kids. So.
Gotcha.
Come on, no, but
All right, I believe we'll just dive into the questions here. We're also live in Cartoonist Kayfabe RingSide Seats, the Facebook group. So if you're watching us there, hit us up with some questions in the comments, and we'll fire them at really anyone you choose. Brett, what I wanted to start off with, dude, is I'm on your Patreon. I've been really enjoying the instructional videos that you've got on there. They're
nice.
So sweet, especially this week's or last week's instructional video about getting textures and how you create these pieces of paper or these textured pieces of paper that you lay over your work. Many of the people here work on digital, or go kind of the same way you do, pencils to blues, print out the blues or whatever, and then do a mixture of traditional and electronic. So I was hoping that you could fill these dudes in on the amazing technique that you use to get some of these tones with the spray paint and all that, if you wouldn't mind spilling some secrets.
I don't know. It's funny because I've been doing the like laying in old textures and stuff like that, like paper pulp, for so long, and now it's like such a big thing. Like there's all these companies online that you can, score free ones from, or download brushes and add texture that way. But I've always liked kind of hunting down my own, so that it's like one of a kind that I know it's not, anywhere else. I would go to like the Goodwill or the town dump when I go up there once a week and just find old crappy novels and stuff. And I think the way it worked was like when they print those books, if the page count doesn't work out right, there'd always be some extra ones like blank pages at the back. So I'll just tear them out and scan them in at like a high resolution so you can lay them over any like poster size or page size. And then to get like the scuff marks and stuff, like you were talking about, I do the technique where you take like photocopy paper and just spray paint it with like matte black spray paint, and then just scuff it up with sandpaper and scan that in and drop that in Photoshop.
I mean, it's so cool, man, because like, as you said, what's it called? Let's see, I use them too. Texture, what are they called? Oh, True Grit. They kind of like,
It did like basically made all that work obsolete,
Right. I mean, I love to do that too. I try to find old piece of paper. Recently, I found this napkin at a restaurant I went to the other day, and it's just like a bunch of these little dots. I have it right here because I scanned it in, and I've been playing with that, trying to get it, because it gives you like this like duo shade kind of thing. And it's just super fun to find all those different types of textures, and it really adds a level. And again, you really have been doing it for a long time. Like this book, this is from like 2000. You can't see it, or we can't. It doesn't pick up. But like all this stuff, each one has like a different texture, a different feel. I mean, I'm sure it was you that inspired me to start trying to do it as well.
Yeah, before that, you could get the like those brushes that make it look like old printing.
Yeah,
I try to find pages that had big areas filled in of color and scan those in and just like chop them out and duplicate it over and over again, so you could like lay that.
It's a good idea too. I mean, it's these analog, like it's like a digital analog thing, It's like, so you're still doing it. Like I found a Mac Plus. Remember the Mac Plus Mac Paint? And it had these different textures that you could use. And there's an emulator online. So I filled in all those things with those different textures, just screen grabbed them, and then made them brushes in Photoshop too, to try to get like different. So much fun. Huge shout out to Troy Little, former guest on the symposium, who stopped in to say what's up. Amazing artist.
What's up?
What up, dude? All right, so let's move on. Anyone else? Any of the other hosts? Craig, Rick, Ray, what's going on, dudes? You want to start with Ray?
Yeah.
I'm still formulating my question, so I'm gonna pick it to Craig or Rick. I'll be back.
All right.
What are you working on now? Like,
I've been this summer, like things kind of slowed down. We wrapped up Tank Girl, and then there was a little bit of a break. So I've been just kind of doing lots and lots of little jobs, which I forgot is it's such a nightmare, man. Just all the different deadline for this, deadline for that, deadline for, it's like trying to line everything up. So I've been doing bi-monthly strips for Sports Illustrated Kids. And then I've been working on a 6-part story for 2000 AD. That's sort of like this, called Pandora Perfect. It's like a spoof of like futuristic Mary Poppins if she was like a cat burglar, and she has this huge 2000 AD type robot guy that like ABC Warriors kind of thing. That's her partner. And it looks like this fall I'm going to be working on Scotty Young hit me up to draw I Hate Fairyland. He's bringing that back. So
Wow.
you're writing
cool.
That's awesome.
the dude that colors all his stuff's going to do the colors again. So that'll be nice. I've been doing my own colors forever now. So it's like, looking forward to just penciling and inking and not having to worry about that.
You do a lot of work outside of comics too, like a lot of illustration work.
This summer I've been working on a game. It's kind of like a apocalyptic board game for Renegade Studios out in California. And then just some random illustration gigs here and there. I used to do a lot of that before I broke into comics, just like sort of the freelance hustle of illustration stuff. Yeah.
Did you
Forgotten.
Sorry.
What's that?
Did you go to school? Like,
no, I'm just all self-taught. I after high school, I did like a decade of construction work or drawing at night, and then finally got enough comic work that I could quit that and do my thing.
nice. It's your stuff's beautiful, man. It's really nice.
Thanks so much.
Really like it. Go ahead, Ray. You're up, buddy.
Yeah. And tell me about that Sports Illustrated gig. Like, because I mean, you're cartooning, but it's not a comics related thing. I'm just kind of curious how that just fall in your lap, or is that something that you kind of developed over years of doing freelancing and then say, hey, I know a guy and it's you, that kind of deal?
Yeah. Or the art director, Drew Zwankowski, I think that's how you pronounce his last name. He was a fan of the Tank Girl stuff. And
cool.
kind of revamping the look of the magazine. And he wanted to incorporate the storyline where there's like a fictional newsroom of kids that put the magazine together, and they printed out of a tree house, this massive like tree house that's like, the king of all tree houses. And so originally it was going to be just designing the characters that would appear, and it morphed into like a monthly strip that takes place in that tree house, like kind of a.
Does that happen often where like somebody recognizes your work, as far as somebody in non-comics recognizes your work, or someone knows an art director and says, or somebody knows somebody that's seen it and recommends?
Yeah. Or just Instagram has always been, and now ArtStation, actually, a lot of jobs this summer I've gotten through that, which I kind of, it's a lot like DeviantArt, but like, it seemed like everybody was kind of jumping ship on DeviantArt, and this place opened up and everybody was signing up on there, and I saw a bunch of people that I, fellow artists on there. So I was like, I'll give it a shot. And I only put up, maybe 5 or 6 pieces and then kind of forgot about it. But then I got all these jobs and people were like, oh yeah, I saw you on ArtStation. So I need to put some more work on there, I guess.
Yeah, man. Okay, that's cool, man. I'll check out ArtStation. I wasn't familiar with it.
Nice.
Yeah, it's
all right, thanks.
Like a lot of concept art type stuff on there.
Oh, cool.
Yeah,
I feel like that's something a lot of us should definitely look into if it's getting art jobs. I mean,
yeah,
can't hurt any of us.
Yeah, I feel like way to go now, man. I mean, I don't think I would have even gotten a job in comics if it wasn't for Instagram. Like, that
really?
was, yeah. I mean, I've never been a big self-promoter type person, like shopping my portfolio around to people. I would just kind of wait for jobs to fall in my lap, and it, in the old days, I would have had to go to the city and go meet with art directors and editors and try to get a gig that. But I just started posting my stuff online, first on DeviantArt, first on MySpace, and then DeviantArt, and then Instagram was just like, that's when everything started kind of taking off.
Is that how you then scored the Tank Girl gig? Is because you were doing Tank Girl pieces before you got the gig or something? Or
I did one like fan art piece of Tank Girl just because I was a huge fan growing up, and I was like, I've never drawn Tank Girl, so I'll give it a shot, and posted it on DeviantArt. And then I think you do those like Throwback Thursday type posts on Instagram, and I was like, oh, here's an old Tank Girl I did, and somehow Alan Martin saw it. And then I'm at like a friend's house for dinner, and I get this email on my phone. It's like, oh, hey, it's Alan Martin, from co-creator of Tank Girl. I was curious if you ever want to like draw Tank. I was like,
holy crap. That's awesome.
yeah, that
Thanks.
was like a big break. It was from him. So,
And I mean, that seems like it's been a very like an amazing relationship that you guys have got going, because honestly, like your Tank Girl work is some of the best. I mean, I would put it up there with Jamie Hewlett. I mean, it's you've done more than him probably at this point.
yeah, I think at this point I did the most amount. Definitely not the. I look at some of the first stuff I did, and I'm like, oh my god. Dude.
What was the first one you did?
Well, the first book was the one that he kickstarted. It was 23 Tank Girl.
Yeah.
And so it was like a bunch of us, like me and Philip Bond and Jim Mafood, Warwick, and Jamie Hewlett was on that. It was like his first comics work in 15 years.
Yeah.
So it was surreal, man. I definitely went all in. Like I took off like a few months from work and just worked on that. But it was like, yeah. And after that, I worked with Philip Bond on that, and his wife Shelley was had vertigo, so she hit me up to do New Romancer with Peter Milligan, and then went back to do more Tank Girl after that. And yeah, it's just been cool.
Yeah. Sick. I love it, dude. And I've been following. I feel like it's been at least since that 21st Century Tank Girl, because I kickstarted that, and so like. I frankly, I love your art, the style, the look, the like beaten up old yet like new, like kind of like a Archie feel with like the grit of like you know, these 80s movies that I love, that you seem to enjoy as well. You draw, you know, it's great, you know, praise, shoveling.
Thanks, man.
Yeah, dude. Rick, what's up, dude? You got some questions, dude?
I have two, actually, if that's okay. So, really like first off, the generic one. I just want to know about, like, because you were talking about how you have all these little jobs going on right now and the little things that you have to do. How do you personally manage your time? Do you like set out actual like schedules and stuff, and like on a calendar, or I just want to know like time management first off, you know, because you have so much going on. If you even do that, because that's the thing. Like I'm having a problem. Like I don't do that. So maybe you don't either.
I've tried to in the past, and it always is just sort of like wishful thinking. Like it's a realistic schedule I'll write up, but then life gets in the way and the schedule always falls apart. And I'm slowly becoming worse and worse at hitting deadlines. So I need to try to get myself back on track. But I think, I don't know, the best is having a set schedule. Like I used to just work whenever I could, and I've started to do it much more like a day job type thing, where I'll like, okay, I'm getting to work at this time, I'm gonna go home at that time no matter what I get done, and I'll try to do a little bit at night if I can, and if I don't, then I don't. And you know, that's sort of how I do
everything from home though, right?
What's that?
Or do you have a studio?
So I had to get a studio a couple years ago, which isn't too far from where I live, and then I've got a Cintiq and a computer at home, so I can chip away at stuff at night if I need to. But
right. But you do a lot of like traditional artwork, and then you just take it to like, what do you use, Photoshop, right? Or maybe something else, you know, so you do it that way. Like
sketch, Photoshop, like laying stuff out and penciling it, and then I'll print it out blue line, ink that, and scan it back in, and then do the colors in Photoshop.
Yeah.
Or I'll sometimes in a program called Sketchbook, which is it's just kind of like a basic drawing program, but I've always liked the way the pens work in that program. So if I ink digitally, I'll do it on that usually.
No, totally. For like me, I have a hard time still inking digitally, because it doesn't ever like, it loses like that human touch for me, you know?
Yeah, absolutely, man.
At least, I don't know. I do need to get better at it though. But that's like kind of leads into the next question, because it's like the big thing about like, I mean, your inks are like, they fucking kill me, dude. Like they're so good, and it's like like, because I watched a few of your warm-up sketches, and then I watched you do it was a Joker mobster commission from like a year ago.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and like, just your inks are so good, man, but like the brush is the thing that kills me, because it's like, I don't know, is that something that, like, is it from piece to piece that you use a brush, or is it something that you actually prefer? Because like, for me, like, it's so intimidating, but I want to use a brush. Like, I use brush pens, but I can't take that leap. And like, when I see what you do with a brush, it's like, I want to get good with a brush, so I can take my art to another level, or whatever you want to call it, because it's like, the brush does so much. Like, you can do so many different things with it. And like, I don't know, I just want to hear like what you have to say about it, I guess, because fuck.
Yeah, well, no, it's definitely intimidating, man. It took a long time before I felt comfortable with it. Like, I think I started using a brush in 2006, maybe. And I was bad. It's like, I looked at some of those pieces I inked, and I would actually often, like, I tried inking a few covers, and I would do it and finish it. And then I'd be like, nah, I'm like re-ink it all digitally and use the new one, just because it wasn't what I was going for. I used to all the stuff I would ink would be with those microns, like the 01, and I would just build up my lines to make them look like brush lines. And it would take forever. And I remember this guy telling me, he's like, why don't you just use a brush? You can get super tiny, you can get like super thick. And I was like, I just can't get it. I can't figure it out. But I read an interview with Jack Davis where he said that he used those Winsor Newton size 3s. And so I kind of just made it like my mission. I'm not going to learn this, even if it takes forever. I would do a lot of.
You totally did.
Well, thanks, man. I just.
I mean, it looks great. Like, whatever you think, yeah, but it looks great.
Like, I wouldn't use it for work for a long time. I would ink, like I would do warm up sketches and then ink those, and then just keep doing that over and over and over again, or commissions and stuff like that, rather than try to learn how to use the brush on comic pages or covers. Like, that was the way to go. Just kind of practice. Wanted to have fun with it and see what it did without worrying about any kind of consequences, like messing up.
Jack Davis would definitely be an influence on you. I can definitely see you in your lines. Just,
I think he's like God, man.
Yeah, it's just gorgeous stuff.
Bonded over. He's like, I'm like the biggest Jack Davis fan, man. I think we're cut from the same cloth. Like that. Like, I love all the Jack Davis stuff, but I think the best stuff is the old EC and Mad stuff, when he was really heavy with the brush and all the hatchings. The line work's just, I feel like that's a high watermark for inking in comics, really.
I love that about your work, though, just how bold you can go with the outside lines, and then just that fine line in it. It brings such a good character and so much energy to it that it reminds me of Jack Davis, who I love as well. So definitely get inspired on that.
Jack Davis is for sure someone that like every cartoonist needs to look at to get ideas, to like just kind of see the start. And another great example of someone who can have this great success inside and outside of comics. He did the movie posters, album. I just got this insane album someone posted in the group, and it's like this psychedelic country band from the 60s, but he did this insane, he did the album art, he did a gatefold cover for it, and it's like, I may never listen to this record again, but it's like, I had to get this Jack Davis cover. It's too insane.
Is that the one that's like it's called Motorcycle Mama or something like that?
I think it is that. Yes. You have that?
Got like and like a hippie chick in the sidecar of a motorcycle with a baby or something.
Yep.
Yeah. That's so cool.
Yeah. And the music's not bad. I mean, it's not like too twangy or anything. And it's definitely got that like 70s, like Ted Nugent type sound, We'll cut him off at the 80s, and we won't reference any of his further life. But all right, the questions is opened up to the entire audience. Sam, welcome, dude. Another artist who's got a jump with a Tank Girl commission.
I do love drawing some Tank Girl.
Brett was saying too that he did that, and he just got reached out from Alan Martin, and now 10 series later,
Sweet.
more prolifically Tank Girlian than the creator Jamie Hewlett.
Well,
All right.
pass along my name.
Oh man. So until anyone else thinks of a question, what are some of the other influences that you draw from? I mean, as far as art goes, but as far as, I mean, anything, movie posters, video games, any of that.
Yeah, I mean, basically everything I grew up with, I feel like that kind of has some kind of hand in the way you get your style. Where I live actually is in the Berkshires of Massachusetts.
Right.
And it's about an hour and a half from Northampton, where Kevin Eastman and Peter Laird lived and made the Turtles. And then when I was like in high school and younger, he made this museum there that would have sort of circulating comic art that would come through it. It's called the Words and Pictures Museum. And so I would go there like every weekend and just soak it up. They had like original Sienkiewicz stuff and tons of Bisley stuff.
Wow.
And Arcrum, things like that. And that's actually where I first learned about Tank Girl. They had a show with all the original artwork right before the movie came out, I think.
Wow. All
And they had-
Hewlett work.
Like they had all the original artwork from Electra Assassin at one point. It was pretty cool.
Wow.
Did you say the Arts and Pictures Museum? Sorry, I went to look for that record real quick, but I couldn't find it.
Words and Pictures.
Words and Pictures, yeah, Kevin Eastman's thing in Northampton. Sick. Man,
Bisley was probably one of my biggest influences when I was young.
yeah.
I was obsessed with that guy's stuff. And then once I discovered Danger Girl, I got really into J. Scott Campbell for a long time. And it's sort of like the older I've gotten, the more and more I go back to like the older art, like from the 50s and 60s, like Alex Toth, Jack Davis, and that kind of stuff.
I feel like you do have to get to a certain point in kind of your art appreciation when you do kind of go back and you see all that amazing stuff from back then. It's like, even I was reading Mad as a kid and I never really took it all in about how amazing the art is in that. You know, as a kid, you're just like, Sergio Aragonés is the king of all art, you know, or whatever. That's what I thought. But, and I mean, he is amazing. But, you know, as you grow, you see the Jack Davises and the Mort Druckers and the whoever else. But I just keep looking through your book that I got right here.
Oh, nice.
Not enough people give enough credit to Cracked magazine. Hey, John Severin.
True. And Dan Clowes, right?
Did they have Dan?
Ian Cracked?
That's what
Cracked?
the Kayfabe guys say, right? Am I right?
Yeah, I think
He had the,
I would read it for all the John Severin stuff.
yeah. They had
DC had a sister book that was called Panic back when like the old Mad was coming out, and that's almost just as good as the Mad stuff. Like all the same dudes drew it. And
yeah. It makes me think of Plop too. That was DC, but then that was like Sergio and it was all Sergio, I think, right?
Don Martin, maybe? I don't know.
Oof, I love a little Don Martin. Oof, sploof.
Yeah.
The sound effects, does it get better?
Can you speak on the Goon a little bit, like your experience and what exactly you did?
Well,
Kevin.
Eric Powell had hit me up to do draw an issue of his book Hillbilly that he was doing, and I got a script for it and I was going to draw it and I just couldn't fit it into my schedule, and so I ended up not getting to do that. And I was like, I thought I'd totally burned that bridge with him, you know. And he hit me up again later about drawing the Goon, and so I ended up doing, I think, 4 or 5 issues of that. It was like one arc of it where him and this other dude Tom wrote it, and then I did all the interiors and colors and stuff. And that was a blast, man. I was a huge Eric Powell fan, so it was pretty surreal to get to work on that.
Yeah, beautiful stuff too. That's in the that's the 5th omnibus, I believe, right? Or the 4th? I can't remember. I'm pretty sure it's in there. Is it not? Your stuff in the collected stuff.
The one I worked on?
Yeah.
I forget which one that is, but I think it's the second of the trade of the new run that he's doing that started like, I don't know, 2019 maybe, or 2018.
I'd have to look. I don't have the book close by, but yeah.
But was the one that he introduced the bad guy, and it was this like caveman, like that dressed super Mr. Dapper, so he was always dressed in tuxedos and stuff, but he was like a Magnum Man.
Yeah. Very nice.
That's great.
He's another guy that you can just tell he's like huge Davis and Wally Wood fan, you know.
I love those breaks. You'll be reading, and then all of a sudden, it's just like the art style just like changes, and it's like
it's all washes and pencils.
Yeah, it's like it's just a mind fuck.
Have you seen his new? He did like this Ed Gein biography.
Yeah, I kickstarted it. Eli and I did, and I'm in Canada, so I'm waiting.
Just got it like a week ago. It's so fucking cool, man. It's awesome. Yeah, it's beautiful.
I got the sketch
one of the best things he's ever done, like art wise.
I see it when I'm out shopping because it's already in the stores near here, and I'm still waiting on mine. And it's like I want to buy it, but it's like I don't want to have 2 copies, so I'm just kind of.
Well, if you do, you won't be disappointed. It's worth having 2 copies of it. It's a good one.
Yeah, that's true.
All right, so we do have a question over here from Kevin Tough Stuff Delgado. What's up, dude?
Hey, so you were saying how, you know, you have kids, you're doing all these different like commissions and stuff and different books. And my question is like, how do you handle burnout?
I try to use the time with my kids to recover from burnout, but sometimes it burns me out even more. I've been, I don't know. I've been doing this battle of constantly burning the midnight oil, burning the candle at both ends type thing, where I'll stay up. It's usually at the end of finishing an issue. I will just do like 2 all-nighters in a row or something like that, and try to bang shit out. But it's tough juggle, man. Like I was saying before, I think trying to come up with a normal work structure and sticking to it has been the closest I can get to keep myself together. Like working just an 8-hour day and going home and calling it quits. So it's hard to turn it on and turn it off though. Like, you know, creative wise, like you get to work and it's like, sometimes you're not in the mood to draw.
Yeah. Sometimes feel guilty when I'm like relaxing. And then when I'm working, I'm like, I wish I was relaxing. But then when I'm relaxing, I'm like, you should be working, kid.
Oh yeah, man.
The worst.
Yeah, I was like complaining about not working on my book, but I was working on the book. So like, what was I complaining about? Because I wasn't getting, you know, the results that I wanted. I was like complaining to like my girlfriend. I was like, I'm not working on this book enough. She's like, you were working on it last night. I'm like, oh yeah, I was. You know, but I get you. So thanks, man.
Yeah, well, I think the key is to try to like have fun no matter what you're doing.
Yeah, for sure.
Like whenever things are going bad for me at work, it's like I realize, oh, I'm just treating this like a job and I'm not having fun anymore. I'm like, I don't want to be drawing this, or I've drawn something that could have been made fun and I just made it into like miserable drawing experience. So I think the more you have fun, doing warm-ups like is something that I often sneak in, and it feels like a waste of time, or it feels like, oh, you know, I should be working on this commission. But I think it helps a lot to just do something that gets those juices flowing. And then when you go on to do whatever you're going to work on that day, you're in a better zone for it.
Definitely.
Kevin, you're working on your next issue there?
I'm working on something.
Something. Okay. All right.
I'm all right. So I'm doing like 2 books like simultaneously.
Nice. One hand on one and one on the other.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Skills. Sweet, dude. Can't wait to hear more about it. Brett, Kevin did a very super sweet 80s, you know, slasher, not slasher, but like 80s blow up, like Die Hard fusion with fluorescent 90s comics, killer tough stuff book. Man, it was amazing.
That's awesome.
Recently kickstarted I backed to the tier where I was able to get my head ripped off in mid comic, which is something I'm so happy about.
All right, I'm working on the next one. The panel I'm drawing right now, he's like literally smoking crack in it. So when we're talking about making it fun, like I'm literally drawing.
I mean, what's more fun than crack?
more crack?
Oh man, sweet dude. I'm excited to see it, dude. All right, thanks. Any other questions at this point? We'll keep chatting.
I have a question.
All right, who's that?
Steven.
Steven. Oh, what's up, dude?
Hey, Brett. I was wondering if you remembered what was the first comic that you ever bought or read? What's like your earliest comic memory?
I don't know. I know I was introduced to our crumb like really, really young, which is probably why I'm so messed up. I was like a kid in the bathtub, and I put like bubble salt.
Parenting, that is.
You know, and my dad's like, "Oh, you look like Mr. Natural." And I'm like, "Who's Mr. Natural?" And so he got a comic and showed me. And so that had a big influence on me. They let me read as much crumb as I could that was like, you know, not too over the top for me when I was a little kid. So that had a big impact on me. And then I don't think I started buying comics until like the Image era, when like Spawn was coming out and stuff like that. I was a big Spawn guy for a long time. And yeah, it was, where I live is pretty rural, so it was whatever I could get my hands on. And I used to get those, there was like this mail order catalog called Bud Plant. I would like flip through that and like pick out what I could afford and like look at the covers of the other ones, be like, that looks cool, what is that? But yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Crumb's not a bad place to start though. You could have done worse.
Yeah.
But then where do you go after that? I mean, it's hard.
Before Crumb was probably Tintin. Like I had a lot of Tintin books, and that was probably younger than that. So
interesting.
Yeah, I remember being at a friend's, sleeping over in kindergarten at a friend's house, and he had some Venom Lethal Protector, like just on his shelf, and I was like, oh, what's this? Like, you know,
when they made him a good guy, and it's like all of a sudden he's badass, and yeah, those were sick.
Yeah, that and I think
I ever started monthlies like that, like.
Yeah, I grew up in Houston, so like I remember going to Bedrock Comics and getting X-Men 2099 and just being like just like so excited to be like, oh, it's X-Men, but it ain't X-Men, you know, book. So, you know, whenever I think about like writing I do for my job as a professor and all that kind of stuff, sometimes that stuff lingers. You know, some of those like early memories really linger in the way that I teach and think. So I'm always curious about how people like what arises out of that early memory.
Well, I feel like there's something about that like nostalgic feel of like, you think of like the music you were listening to then, the books you would buy. Like I always, for some reason, think of like that 90s mall I used to go to buy comics. Like there's like the Terminator 2 arcade game and stuff like that. You know, it all kind of mashes together in my head.
Let's see. And I mean, it obviously permeates in the work that you do at this point, you know, making it feel,
totally.
Yeah. Let's see. You know, we do have Troy Little in here. Have you guys met before or?
Not yet, but I'd love to meet you in person someday. I was going to actually ask you about conventions. Is that something you do a lot of, and what are your kind of feelings on, you know, I see like Rose Comic Cons going on right now in Portland, I think, and people are going to conventions again.
I've never been a huge convention guy. I did like New York, I think in 2016, maybe. And then I did Heroes Con a bunch, and I did one over in England at the London Comic Con, and that's it. But basically, you know, with the family schedule right now with 2 little kids, like I've cut it down to like just, okay, I'll do Heroes Con every summer. And then when my kids get bigger, maybe I'll start, you know, heading further away and doing stuff. But that's sort of been my go-to. I'm still hesitant to go to any with the whole way the world is. It seems sketchy.
Yeah, I'm me and a few of the other guys here are Canadian, so you know the idea of going down to the US for conventions, because you guys are having conventions, but we're not yet up here in Canada by and large. Like there's not been a lot of in-person things happening, and so just seeing it happen down there, and it feels like I don't know if I'm ready to go to conventions anytime soon. Some people are.
I don't know. I don't think anybody should be taking any cues from us on how to open things back.
Anyway, I hope to meet you someday in person. That'd be awesome. I'd love to see your art in the flesh.
That'd be sick. Like that's where my rep Inky Knuckles Cam is up in Canada, so it'd be cool to do a show up there at some point.
Get in with the TCAF guys, the Toronto Comic Art Festival. It's really amazing event to take part in if you can get in with that. It's a free event. I think it runs over 2 days in May, like over Mother's Day. So that's usually a problem for some people, but
they always come on like Father's Day, Mother's Day.
I know, right? But it's takes place in a public library in downtown Toronto, and it's about 3 or 4 floors filled with like everything from zines to, I had Dan Clowes there one time, and Seth and a whole lot of other people. So you get a whole spectrum and gamut of comic people. And I feel like your stuff would fit in really well there, like as a good kind of, it's not a whole lot of say like big Marvel DC superhero type stuff, but it's got a lot of cool, like, I want to say on the edge of indie stuff, or just, I don't know, stuff I would find more interesting, I guess, in a lot of ways. I feel like your stuff would fit in there really good. It'd be something you should look into sometime anyways.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Sweet. What you working on over there, Troy?
Just working away. Brenda's working away over here on the other side of the room too. She's actually paying the bills. I'm just doing my own thing here. Nice. Back in January, I started working on a graphic novel that I wrote 10 years ago, and because of the state of the pandemic and everything, one of us has to take care of the kids and one of us has to do a job. So we tag team in. She's working on a project, so I'm working on my stuff when I get a chance. So just stuff I'm putting up on Patreon. So
it's good
I
stuff.
think Craig's reading it.
It's great. It's really good stuff. I love it.
Thank you, Craig.
Me too.
Yeah, you're there too, right? Eli?
Yeah.
Are you up there too?
I'm up there.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. All right, sweet. And like I said, Brett's got an amazing Patreon too, with some really helpful videos. I've been, I've got to the point now where I'll follow along. I'm like, I'll watch a step or two, and then I'll go over and try out these layering techniques. And the last one came with the different backgrounds, the black spray painted crinkle that you made and stuff. So I've been messing with those. I was like, I was watching at work, and then I was totally like sidetracked for like an hour, just throwing these different layers over top of like every piece of work that I've done. And I was just like, oh, that looks good. Go ahead and try. We're gonna try. Can I lay this over? And like, it's awesome, man. I love it.
Good to hear. It's like I've never really made many of those tutorial kind of things, so it always feels so just like pretentious and preachy making them. Like, who am I to tell you how to do anything? You know what I mean?
Yeah, but I mean, you're not being preachy about something that you don't know. You're just telling us about how you do it, which is like so interesting, because it's clearly like your way, or the freaking highway. No, I mean, it's your way, and it's like very interesting, And so, and maybe we all have like our way that we do it too, but I don't feel like I'm doing things the right way, because I always do like, select, color, and I take out all the white, and then I just have like my black lines in black, and then I'll duplicate that, and then I'll try to fill in colors like that and do it different ways. But you were showing all these different ways of like of doing the layer masks, and like I need to learn that. And
that's how you get rid of your whites. You're saying you select all white and then just delete it?
Yeah.
Oh shit. Does that not affect the edge of your
it will, and if I use anything, if I do any shading or use, it's like it's got to be only black line, and so like now that's why I'm like I can't do this anymore, especially because I've been using pencils to do shading, or I've been doing these rubbings and stuff. It's like I have to learn how to do the layer masks, like I've been learning from you.
Yeah,
I'm as bad as you are. I'm gonna go look at your Patreon after this and learn a few things myself.
The cool thing about though is like if you do like washes and stuff, that goes right on there. It's just all based in grayscale. So
okay, maybe you can help me out, because I have the comic I'm working on is a grayscale, like ink wash comics, and I haven't gotten to the part where I have to color it yet. But I'm like, when I get there, how am I going to do this?
The way I would have done it before is like just make that a layer and set it to multiply so that it like shines through on top of the layers you're coloring on. But if you do it with the layer mask, you can actually add color holds to the washes and stuff, so you could make them, whatever color you want.
That's kind of what I'm trying to figure out how to do. But so you've cracked the code there. I need to figure.
Nice.
All right, I'm gonna check out that. For sure.
You can check it out, or like all you have to do basically is, do you know how to like create a layer and add a layer mask to it?
Masks are something I've unfortunately been completely ignorant with. I'm very much with Eli on this. I've done black and white stuff for like the license projects I do, and just color range, delete,
It's pretty easy. There's like a little button at the bottom of the layers panel there. It's like a box with a circle in it, I think.
Mm-hmm.
So you basically just create a new layer, fill it black, and then click on that button and it adds a layer mask. Then you click on that layer mask and go to the channels, and it'll be down at the bottom below like the, RGB layers.
Mm-hmm.
And you paste your black and white line art onto that, and it creates the mask from the line art. So you have to copy that first and then just paste it onto that, like control paste.
Yeah, I guess that's where I get confused, because you get a layer mask and you're going inside of the channels, and that's where I get
That's
lost.
why the video is super helpful, and that's why I'm like,
see how it goes. Like, so now it's to the point where I'll just be like, zip through and do it to page and stuff. But yeah, I forget how I figured that out. It was like, I think I bought some kind of coloring, like old school coloring thing, and it came with like a Photoshop file. I'm like, what are these layer masks? And then I accidentally pasted something onto it, and I was like, oh, you can do that with your line art too then. And that made a lot of sense, because I'd see guys like what's his name, Francisco Herrera, does like all his artwork pencil. It's like not inked, it's just all really tight pencils, but he'll have color holds and stuff on them, and I'm like, how's he doing that? And I think that's gotta be how he does it. Like, and the nice thing is that it keeps it like perfect. Like the line art, the way I used to do it in the past, it would always, all the different techniques, it would get kind of like blown out or like little jagged edge on it, and it keeps it exactly the way the inks are. You can just see through them and color on them and stuff.
Are you coloring in the channels, or just you select that channel, you come out, you're working on that mask layer?
Yeah, well, it's basically like, what it does is it creates a mask up, so like you're drawing, your line art is the mask. So it's like somebody, like where it's gray, it's semi-transparent. Where it's black, it's completely transparent. Where it's white, it's opaque. So you have to actually invert your line art to make it work right, if that makes sense. Like,
I think maybe. I'm just gonna go on your Patreon and sign up and find out everything I need to know. So
Troy, are you talking about coloring in the illusion of life, like colors for that?
Yeah, I mean, you've seen it, like,
Yeah,
stuff that I'm doing is just, it's grayscale, right? Like washes and stuff.
Don't color it.
And so no, I gotta color that.
I love it. I love the way it looks.
Thank you. But yeah, I want to get, like, I'm being real cheap, I guess, instead of actually learning how to like spend my time doing watercolors. I'm just doing quick ink washes and then coloring those, because I'm trying to find a way to work faster, I guess. And I thought that might be it, but maybe it isn't.
a lot of information imparted right there, dudes.
Yeah, that's
right.
Dude, that's what this is all about. I think mostly everyone that's here is like a creator of some kind. So it's like this type of geek out is exactly.
Yeah.
I have a question.
Who's that? Donde?
Yeah, I have a question. First of all, what's up, Brett? Appreciate you taking your time to be here with us tonight. I'm a big Tank Girl fan. Me and my brother used to read them when I was younger, and I gotta honestly say that you with the aesthetic of how everything is drawn, and you do a really good job, you know, keeping the artwork going. My question basically is, how do you, like, one thing that's great about Tank Girl is that it's really wacky. You know what I mean? She's always doing something funny. It's funny, but it has this seriousness, but it's very, very, very wacky. How do you go about continuing those wacky ideas in your illustration? So like, how do you just like sit down and go, okay, I'm just going to draw, or do you plan out what you're going to do? And you know, something like that. Like, do you just draw when you're drawing and you're just like, oh, okay, this is what comes to mind and I'm just going to throw this down? Or do you plan out the artwork before you do it?
With the covers I've done, I do that. I'll just try to have fun with it and do something that feels right for Tank Girl. With the interior stuff, it's a lot of it's in the scripts that I would get from Alan. Like, he would send some pretty detailed strips sometimes, like, right down to vehicles and things like that. But it was always fun and funny. So that, I think, I don't know. That's always sort of been just how I draw. I have a certain amount of humor in the artwork itself. So
he's a bit of an artist too. Does he add? I mean, Alan does he add like little sketches and stuff too sometimes for character design?
No, and actually, is he? I've never really seen any of his artwork.
Like, I saw him draw something in one of the old Tank Girl books, or one of the something I got from that Tank Girl website. There's like a storybook or something. I don't know. One of those Tank Girl poster magazines, but maybe not.
Oh, he actually, I draw that.
It's a new.
It's children's book, kind of.
Oh, you did the 72s or something like that. The 60s.
Oh no, well, that's Hewlett.
That was
I
Hewlett.
think.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Dang.
That was, they were going to create another IP or something back then, and it just became the Gorillas, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, that worked out for them. For him, for Jamie, I guess.
Yeah.
Not for Alan, unfortunately. All right. How you doing on time, man? You feeling good, or your hours?
Yeah, I can hang unless you guys want me to go. I don't know.
No, we definitely don't.
Man.
We do have our other guest that I'd like to introduce though as well, so we can bring him into the mix. We have Steele Filipek, writer, teacher, podcaster, writer for video games as well, which is like something that interests me. You wrote a Turtles game. I'd like to talk a little more about that.
Only indirectly on that one, more directly on Halo and Need for Speed.
Oh, dang. Okay. So what? All right. Let's merge everyone. So now everyone, if you have questions for Brett, or if you have questions for Steele, everything is open, or Troy, or hey, any single person in this audience. If you have a question for Rick or Aaron or anyone. Anyway, Steele.
Frankly, I'm questioning myself right now. So.
Me too. I'm questioning my hosting style as well. Yes. Shut up. I'm just kidding. So Steele, writing video games, like versus writing comics, Arcane now available from Cosmic Lion Productions, cosmiclionproductions.com, issue 1, issue 2, next month. New monthly. Anyway, what goes into writing comics versus writing video games? Because this is interesting.
Yeah. So, I mean, the obvious and the big difference is that, that comics are a traditional media platform, a broadcast media platform, where it's passive reception. So it's traditional narrative structure, beginning, middle, and end. Protagonist need, obstacles, all that kind of stuff. It's non-interactive, unless, of course, one is creating an interactive comic, interactive art. So there is a difference in the form, of course, naturally, than there would be in a film or in a novel or something like that, of course. And there's the marriage between verbiage and art. But for video games, writing for video games is a lot about it's about interactivity, of course, which means telling the story natively, telling the story in a way without having to stop the game, if at all possible, using the designs to evoke more story than you can do in a cutscene. kind of in the same way that, at least in the circles that I go through, I'm not going to speak the entire industry, using cutscenes to tell a story is kind of like using a voiceover in a film. It's seen somewhat like a crutch. And so there's a lot that goes into a game, that one would understand from, an archetypal perspective, getting people to understand a character from a distance, but also having to marry that to gameplay, finding ways to marry the mechanic to the theme to the mechanic, being able to build a story fairly rapidly. The rule of thumb for a screenplay is 25% Act 1, 50% Act 2, 25% Act 3, with a very traditional Hollywood story structure. For a game, it's more like 5 or 10% Act 1, 80% Act 2, and 10% Act 3. There's a much bigger gap because you want to get people into the experience as much as possible. So those are the biggest elements, and a lot of it is outline based. A lot of it is trying to create rapid story for a big team if you're working on a AAA production. So that's I could go on for days about that, but those are like the big things.
Right, and you do have a podcast that's based on storytelling and story creation. What's that one called again?
Building a Better Story World. You can find it on any fine podcatcher, or building absw.buzzsprout.com. Just built around it's through prompts and case studies, walking through the differentiation of how to create a traditional story versus how to create the story world. For those who are not familiar with me, I see a few friendly faces here. I'm the executive editor and lead transmedia producer at a company called Starlight Runner Entertainment. And we've helped create multimedia, transmedia, and story worlds. I've helped them for the 13 years. They've been around since 2000, 21 years. Wow. And we've worked with clients like Microsoft and the Walt Disney Company and Nickelodeon. That's where the Ninja Turtles thing comes in. Socio-political campaigns, video games, branding campaigns to create story worlds for clients. And so there is a methodology to that that's different than traditional narrative design. The example that I use, like not every film needs to be a story universe. Like Chinatown is a complete, thing. It exists as a film. It doesn't need a story world to exist. But there's a reason why the Two Jakes, which I think is a little underrated, why it just doesn't work, because it's not designed to function as a story world. Whereas there are other story worlds that succeed, and there's a step-by-step process to that, and there are many. And I try to go through several through the course of these episodes.
Man, just the term story world, is intriguing to me, because whether I thought about it or not, when you create a comic, when I was creating my story world for my comic Monkey Lion, you try to build in all these things. Like you don't just these two characters are touring the galaxy. You create venues and music types and character. So man, that's just something that everyone can think about when you're creating your comic book, is like the story world. Like Ninja Turtles really did that well, if we may use something we all know. I mean, obviously everyone knows Ninja Turtles. Their world was created so vividly through what became these like ninjas, and to some people pizza, and cowabunga and Shredder and Mousers and Dimension X. It's like everything was brought up, and everything, that is such a rich story world. And that's maybe why it became so popular and exciting for people, is like anything can be done in that. Tank Girl too, man. I mean, it's like, there's so many different things and so many possibilities. Jet Girl, Sub Girl, and that can just go on forever, real quick, let's bounce back to Brett here. Aaron Lee from Pens and Pedals, author of the amazing comic book Wesley the Robot, I found out the other day, is actually based on a soundboard coming to life from his old radio studio, which is such an awesome premise. He's asking Brett what it was like for you working on Heavy Rotation. Obviously, that makes sense now, coming from a radio DJ, speaking on a radio DJ comic.
That was a lot of fun. Getting to work with my old boss Shelly Bond on that.
Right.
It was an interesting book, because I think she put it together. She kind of like steered the boat, and she had all these old friends from college that didn't have any comics experience that were helping to create the storyline. So it was
story world, if you will.
Yeah, story. It was a lot of back and forth of changing this and changing that and trying to get all the likenesses of the people that she went to college with. But it was cool to dip into that, 80s college radio kind of world. Yeah.
Did you have a favorite part of drawing it, or maybe a toughest part?
The toughest part was there was like a 2-page spread in it. And originally it was supposed to be like an overview of downtown Ithaca that was going to be like a game board, and you followed the story around the game board. But then once I started adding in panels and stuff, you couldn't really see it much anymore. And so I actually had gone on Google Earth, found Ithaca, New York, and tried to make it perfectly accurate, and spent like a whole day drawing that town and stuff. And they're like, oh, well, we're just gonna like shade it back and put the strip on top of it. It'll work great for the background though. But that was the trickiest part, to try to, problem solve that page and make it work. I ended up, kind of cheaping out and using arrows to help you get around the page. But
yeah, that was cool.
Oh, I see that now. Like when you read it, like, because it's all in blue, but there's so much detail back there. I'm seeing all that stuff now. So wild.
Thanks, man.
Yeah,
it turned out to be a cool project. There's some cool stuff in there.
Yeah.
Oh, for sure.
And I like those multimedia things where it's like comics here, a write-up here, a strip here, a playlist here. There's a playlist on Spotify. I love that.
Yeah, at some point I want to try to make a comic and then make a soundtrack for it, like all original music, and like package it in the back, play it while you're listening to it. I don't know if anybody's done that or not, probably, but
we got a shout out. Oh, Steele's done it. Yeah, I did QR codes for my book where you would go listen to like Fela Kuti or Do What You Like by Digital Underground or something that would like accentuate the page or something like that. I know, what was I just thinking?
Image Grand Design, didn't it have its own soundtrack?
Yeah, I kind of dropped the ball on that a little. I'm gonna take that on the chin here, because we were supposed to have a flexi disc come out with that metal song.
Yeah.
I didn't get it out in time.
I had a soundtrack for my RingSide Anthology 2 months ago.
You did?
Yeah.
It's a good idea.
When we were doing album covers, and I did Kings of the Wild Frontier. Every page was one of the tracks from Kings of the Wild Frontier.
And I think Jim Mahfood's Girl Scouts too, the last one, came with like a Spotify playlist. He always does the like recommended listenings in the beginning.
The KRS-One joint, the word.
Oh
word.
Shit, yeah, that's insane. Kyle Baker's one that comes with that tape, and it's like when you hear word, change that, turn that page, and it's like where. Oh, I love that book. It comes with the cassette. Oh, our dude Sam Lock Ward, Manny, shout out Manny Gomez. He showed me this. Sam Lock Ward has this mini comic that's very much Cable, X-Force, Liefeld crossed with just like absolute hacking people up, ripping arms off, and it's just he's like outsider art, but his most recent, I bought the tape cassette version with an amazing Dr. Zayas portrait on the front, and he's got a mini comic in there for each song. It's got like some lyrics and stuff. It's definitely Daniel Johnston meets I'll say Ween because I love him, but it's got that like home cooked Weenness to it. All right, let's kick back over to Steele and see if Craig or Rick or Ray's got questions for our second guest.
Steele, I'm interested. I read Arcane. I really enjoyed it. I got the digital book for now. I'll get Eli to collect all the monthly physical copies. But I'm interested to hear about what you worked on in Halo, as I love Halo.
Yeah, because this is being recorded, I can only speak a little bit about that, but I can give what is out there in the public and a little bit behind the scenes on that. So we were involved. Starlight Runner was involved during the divorce from Bungie. moving from Halo 3, Halo Reach, and on to Halo 4, which was developed by 343. And so it was pretty publicly nasty at points. And so this was right off of Starlight Runner's work on Pirates of the Caribbean. That I was at the tail end of that project. If anybody ever saw the Talkback Experience, which was a Rocky Horror Picture Show style thing with Pirates of the Caribbean, I wrote the script for that. It's my first big project there. And so Microsoft, first of all, they wanted to kind of bring all the continuity together. There was a lot of disparate continuity. I wouldn't say disparate, but there was some flex there. Yeah, and they wanted to bring it all under kind of one house, so that there would be a franchise visionary, Frank O'Connor, as well as several other the different divisions that could all kind of filter into the same funnel, so people weren't kind of scattered all around. And a part of that also was that as it was transitioning from Bungie to 343, there was concern from all parties involved that the narrative was going to shift too broadly too quickly, so that it would go from this one style of setting to another. And so we were tasked to do what we call a narratological assessment, which is a big word for reading all this stuff and putting it into a historical context. Why does Halo work? Why, what does it speak to in terms of the narratives that are important to people, gamers especially, but also in a broader context because they wanted to attract more users. And then also just begin to plan for a much broader and much bigger implementation, which required understanding and helping to script the stories, the branches between Halo Reach and Halo 4, because that was kind of the handoff right there, so that there would be continuity, yes, but that it would still broadly feel like it was the same thing, and then also come with all this extra transmedia, multimedia content. The biggest of which that you can still see is Forward Unto Dawn, the 4-part series that was released there. We were not directly involved with the scripting of that, although we were its champions. There was a big push to ignore that, and we kind of had to go to the mat for that one, because we said if the first thing that you're going to do is break continuity, you might as well have not even paid us. So we were able to put in all of these different elements through the games, through Halo Reach, and particularly with Halo 4 with Cortana's rampancy, which was an element in the novels and the comic books that had largely been overlooked in the video game circles, not entirely, but largely. And so we used that as the catalyst for the narrative, and that began the narrative proper. And we worked with Greg Bear on the Forerunner series to be able to create the primary antagonist that would appear in Halo 4. So there was a lot of back and forth and trying to get all the parties involved as we were building up essentially a merchandising silo in order to funnel everything into that. So that's the stuff that I can kind of talk about directly.
So are you saying that you're partially responsible for the creation of the Prometheans?
Yes, I will. We were partially. It's hard to. There's where you go with that. Where you go with the particular elements is all up in the air. As an example from something else that I can talk about a little more with Need for Speed Payback. The characters existed, but the plot mechanics, the plot elements did not, and so we brought those in, but then they were transformed into the narrative that wound up being there, which was then funneled back into the gameplay, which was then shifted again. So it's the project as big as that. It's not like it's not like a pilot or even a movie screenplay where yes, you'll probably have 10 or 12 writers on that. You'll have 150, 200 people working on any given in any given aspect, and they all bring a little bit of narrative into that. Because it's a gigantic moving ship that stops for nobody, unless you work for Nintendo, and they'll delay it until it gets it right. God bless them. Otherwise you're going into crunch. So that's one example.
Yeah, well, from Reach forward, the story started to kind of make more sense. You know what I mean? So I will say that, because the first 3 are a little bit sporadic. Did you work on the new one coming out too?
The elements, so not directly. Our direct involvement ended with Halo 4. We did create a roadmap for future content, and we're seeing a lot of the content from that in Infinite. Some of it diverged in Halo 5. You know, I can't really get into the specifics of that. You know, and some of the stuff we liked wound up in there, and some of the stuff we didn't like wound up in there. And I'll also say that some of the things that we recommended did not work as well. So, you know, it wasn't 100% batting average on that. One of the things that we wanted to do with that was, I can give this a little tidbit. So when we asked several of the head creatives, without naming names, you know, what Halo is about, they said, well, it's about eternal warfare. And we said that we had to kind of redirect the course on that, because that's a very, very dark and depressing storyline. It works for some IP, Warhammer 40K specifically. You know, it's kind of this like very heavy metal, you know, death and nihilism, and it kind of has this great, you know, vibe to it. But that's not quite what Halo is like. There is a kind of optimism to it. You know, that there is a savior there. There is, you know, this, you know, it's not surprising that the narrative hit so hard right after 9/11. You have a group of fundamentalist religious fanatics who are, you know, destroy this symbol of this militaristic society, and suddenly begins this this warfare, this perpetual warfare. So, you know, we did work on that, begin to shift, and that's why you can kind of begin to see some of those narrative elements begin to turn at that point.
Nice. I want to say again, Arcane was a great read.
Thank you very much.
I really enjoyed it, and I got to make sure that Eli's holding on to some physical copies for me. But yeah, good stuff, man. And thanks for that.
Thanks for the question too.
All right, Rick, what's up, dude? Okay, Ray, what's up with you, man? Got a question here for Steele?
Yeah, I do have a quick question. I'm just curious. So you're working for a licensed property. It doesn't have to be like Halo. So how does that work just broadly, where you come in to do work on a licensed IP? So there's certain limits and boundaries they want you to do, but they tell you, hey, we want you to do this, but it's got to fit in with this in this box. And like, I guess how much freedom do you get? Because it's not the same thing, but I always think about like a lot of these Disney Star Wars films where they hire a director, say, we want you for your vision, but then like they say, well, no, that's not what we really want. And it's like, they want, you know, it's like they really don't want, so they end up doing reshoots. So I've always been curious, like when people have to work on any IP, like, is that common, or is that like just particularly with them, or it's just like, how does that working? We're trying to be creative, but you still have to work within that box. Yeah.
So in a way, paradoxically, the box is a little freeing, because it means that you're kind of being given a prompt, like a writing prompt or an artistic prompt. You kind of have to start with this anchor, and you can go here. And it's nice if there is, you know, a kind of playpen within which you can work. And this is something that the Marvel Cinematic Universe has done, you know, fairly well. You know, we all probably have our favorites and our least favorites, but you know what they've done with Kevin Feige, with a visionary at the helm, is if you look at most of the most successful work, it's okay. It is a superhero movie, but much like the classic Marvel stories, it's another story first. So Ant-Man is a heist movie that's also a superhero movie. Black Panther is a father-son story that also happens to be a superhero film, and then that kind of guiding light allows for things to occur. Sometimes we do get into a situation, either directly or indirectly, where the property is it's a little bit of a mess. Sometimes we're brought in to fix that mess. An example that I can talk about, because it's been over a decade, was Transformers. We worked on Transformers Prime as Transformers. The second feature film is coming out, and the films were doing gangbusters, but the resulting merchandise was not. And so we had to be able to work with the creators of Transformers Prime, first of all, to figure out what the discrepancy was. And then also, you know, what can they do to be able to stay true to the Transformers property, while at the same, you know, and knowing that they're trying to be in the Bay universe, but they can't quite be there because he's just going to do whatever he wants. And so we had to create these kind of touch points where they could kind of weave in and out of continuity. And eventually it just got to be too much and it collapsed. But for a number of years, it worked quite well, where it was kind of like side stories. As Gaiden to the Bay universe and was able to stay true to the initial essence and whatnot. And eventually they diverged. So, it's kind of fun when you're working with people who are creative and they're like, we know, this is a demographic. It's for 8 to 12-year-old boys, so, and we need to sell toys. So what can you do with it? What can you do with other things? Sometimes you do have a creative visionary or a team that is powerful enough that they can dictate terms, a la Gore Verbinski, Johnny Depp, Jerry Bruckheimer on Pirates of the Caribbean, who we're involved with. I was only involved tangentially with Avatar with James Cameron, but that was another example. And that was a huge, media apparatus. It was his idea, but it's a $250 million property. So it's fun in a way, but there are definitely guidelines. And when there's a brand associated with it, not just Disney, but Pirates of the Caribbean or Tron is another example. There are brand standards. Sometimes they were brought in to clean up the brand standards. And other times they're there to kind of guide us. And other times, it doesn't quite work out due to outside circumstances. Another example, I wrote a Men in Black video game, and 2 months before release, they changed the entire control structure. So it went from a light gun game to a hand-controlled game. And suddenly most of the mechanics and story just didn't work together. And I'm proud of the script that I wrote, but the game was a mess. And that's a shame, but that's an example of where, dicta from higher ups and, the developer and all these things that can create a big muddled mess. But sometimes it comes out, sometimes things work out great. And, you just kind of have to find the fun. You have to find the thing that speaks to you. Tron was never my favorite movie. But it was really cool that we there was Daft Punk soundtrack and there was this, this revolutionary story, and we got to tie in the animated show, and we got to touch on the script. It was all, that was a lot of fun. So it's, the short and long of it, the box is a little bit freeing, and sometimes there's only so much you can really do with just based on what's there.
Okay. All right. Thanks. That was really helpful.
Thank you.
Sweet, man. Steele, I'm learning so much about you. We've been working together for months, but we've never got to chat in this way. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Tron Uprising is underrated big time, by the way.
Yeah.
That show was so good.
For the budget that they had, this is a fun story. So we got to help consult on that. So my boss and a colleague of mine, so my boss, Jeff Gomez, and Fabian Nicieza helped create the Hot Wheels World Race show for Cartoon Network. And they had next to no time and next to no money. So all they did was they used wireframes from the Barbie Adventures, which was made by the same production house. And so it made it look neon and cool and different. And, and it was just the cheapest thing that they could throw up. And so we were able to give some tips and tricks. They were able to give some tips and tricks for Tron Uprising to be able to maximize the value and to minimize the time for some of that. And if you look at it, at certain points, if you're really looking, you can see, I wouldn't call them cost-cutting measures. I would say intelligent ways to stretch $1. And when I see those moments every once in a while, I'm like, there are those guys there.
Nice.
All right, let's move over to Rick, and then we'll get to you, Jerome and Sam. What up, Rick?
Hey man, nice to meet you, dude.
Nice to meet you.
I'm just really, because hearing about all these different ways that you've taken your writing, it's really interesting. I'm really curious about what your process is when it comes to comics and getting your idea to these artists, because I know that you had done some of the character designs, right? I don't know if it's all of them but I know you did character designs for the book and everything. So I thought that's really cool. That's always helpful. There was a point where I thought I was only going to write, and I would sketch a lot of stuff, which ultimately became my thumbnails and everything. But just really curious about your process with that,
Yeah. So, it's different project by project. So, speaking of the soundtrack, I've worked on a graphic novel that was a band was creating a concept album that was based in this narrative universe. And so I created the graphic novel that was associated with that. So you could listen through to the album from beginning to end and follow along with the story. And so that was really for that was interviewing each band member who was a character in the comic book, and what they wanted out of that story, what they wanted out of their character, because they dressed up like these characters on stage all the time, but they kind of only thought about it from an aesthetic perspective. And so I wanted to make sure that the theme was there, that the archetype was there, that they needed to differentiate from each other. It's very easy when you're on stage. One person's on the drums, it's a prog rock band, one person's on the violin, one person's on the guitar, and one person's on the organ. And they all have different costumes. It's very easy to see that. And yes, of course, a good artist, good character design, you'd be able, classic silhouette and all that jazz. But for that process, that was really understanding the characters, building from the ground up there, and then building the narrative out with their input from that. For Arcane, this was a long process from a very early age. And speaking of Fabian Nicieza, he was the guy who gave me the kind of the kick in the ass to be able to just like go out, bite the bullet, and do it, because I've been equivocating on it for so long. And for that, it was once I found the entry point, once I found the it stifled for a long time because I was trying to work comedy into it, and the comedy just never quite sat right. And then once I got rid of the comedy and just really focused on this one character's journey, and and trying to implement all I'd learned about story world design and all that, then that really began to focus. So it was about this one character, this 14-year-old who accidentally touches this artifact, and suddenly he's given all of these memories, and he's his eyes are open to this world sideways to our own. And I wanted to uncover and discuss themes that were important to me from a young age. I grew up in Pittsburgh, in post-industrial Pittsburgh. I saw a lot of young men who got trapped into cycles of violence, alcoholism, abuse, and they never quite got out of it. And I wanted to put those themes into a story, into a YA story, and kind of delve into that. And that's kind of what Arcane is. It's symbolism for growing up, adolescence, manhood, understanding that there's a world out there, and there's a dark world sometimes, and you were not privy to it until you got to see behind the curtain. So for that helped shape my idea there, because each arc, each mini arc or each issue is about something else, that a young man might have to deal with. Hogan in the first arc, he's going to meet a character, the symbolism for magic in this world is addiction. That he sold his name in order to have more power, and he literally sold everything else to kind of fuel this addiction to this power. And Hogan is going to see himself reflected in that, because he's going to develop powers. And eventually, he's going to deal with a crisis of faith. He's going to deal with an abusive parent. He's going to deal with recognizing the flaws of his parents, instead of viewing them as, I wouldn't say perfect beings, but as exemplary beings, viewing them as humans. That was what attracted me to that. So I think with each project I work on in comics and anywhere, trying to find that, whatever that key is, to kind of break the story, to try and get into it, even when it's something I wouldn't call it boring, but different, like working on like Goldfish, which is a project I worked on for Pepperidge Farm. We had to discover the deeper meaning of goldfish, and you can kind of imagine how fun that was. We got a lot of free cookies though, and a lot of free crackers.
Oh wow.
Thank you.
Amazing.
Thank you, Steele.
My son loves goldfish. So
Oh, they're the best.
Right.
I love
goldfish.
That's not where I thought that story was going to end.
I would actually take payment for art and goldfish. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah.
They gave us crates. They gave us crates.
God.
Wow.
All flavors, pretzel too? Or
Oh, everything. Actually, that's
cheddar?
speaking of that, that's a funny story about breaking a story. We couldn't break the story of Goldfish, because
Right.
what is the story of Goldfish? And the background is that we were hired by Pepperidge Farm because Goldfish was selling really, really well. It's owned by Campbell's. Campbell's soup was down in the gutter. Too much sodium. People weren't buying it anymore. But what's the difference between the sodium in that and the sodium in Goldfish? And we couldn't figure it out. And they gave us crates. So what would happen was we were working on a bunch of different projects at the same time. Of course, we were working on Splinter Cell at that time. We were working on a project called Kumaiti, which is a collectible card game. And we would eat. I think I gained 20 pounds just on Goldfish alone, because they were just always there. And what we discovered was that when we would be eating Goldfish, we'd be reminiscing about these other projects and talking about other things. And when we had goldfish when we were kids. And that was the moment when we realized it wasn't about the fish, it was about the feeling, which is the tagline that we came up with it. You know, goldfish are a party food. You share them with people. You reminisce about it, and you eat them with in parties. You eat them with your kids. You eat them during the Super Bowl, and it's tied to this emotionality, very similarly to what Coca-Cola is. It's like a contract with America. You know, the why New Coke was doomed to fail because it broke that contract. That, you know, that the fish, you know, the branding had to reflect that kind of classicness to it, as did the narrative or the branding. Pepperidge Farm remembers exactly.
and smiles back.
Yeah, the villain just blasts them with flavor all the time, and that's why they... All right, let's move over to Jerome. What's up, dude?
What's going on, guys? Thanks, Steele, for coming out. Rick asked a really good question, and you kind of answered a lot of what I was thinking about asking. But when you're talking about writing the story world, right? Like making that up as opposed to writing just a regular linear story. Do you find that having that world helps with making other linear stories, or like what's the process that goes through your head? Because I'm thinking of, like, as a video game, I didn't even know, call me stupid, but I didn't even realize that video games had writers, right? I just thought it was like pew 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 pew, and that was it. But if there's, because I don't play video games, but with the story side of it, it's like is it a lot of like the choose your own adventure? Like, are you thinking about that a lot, right? Because I always found choose your own adventures, the concept, really cool in books, but they just always suck. Like I couldn't actually read the story because it was more the action of being able to like go back, which was cool, which is probably why you do it in video games rather than a book. But I think if there's a way to kind of crack that so it works in a story, like, do you have any insight on that? Like, you need a bowl of goldfish to like kind of put that through?
Yeah, you know, I think with games particularly, so there are three broad categories of games, and I say broad because we could get into exceptions and we can get into crossovers and we can get into all this stuff, but there are games that are not really narratives. You know, Tetris doesn't really have a narrative. You know, Pac-Man, okay, you have Pac-Man and your ghosts, but that's not a story per se. And there are many people, you know, I wouldn't be one of them, but I understand the argument that would say that, you know, games don't need stories, they don't need narratives. You know, I think to reach an audience, one needs to understand branding and, you know, what was called in arcades, the approach. You needed to understand what your arcade machine looked like across the room. You know, and you needed to be able to tell a tutorial and get the basic story down in 10 seconds max. Because if you don't entice that person, they're not going to put that quarter in. They're going to go to their old standby. And sometimes that's a little ridiculous. You know, we've also probably seen the memes like, you know, are you a badass enough dude to rescue the president? You don't need a ton of narrative to make it work. On the other end, you have highly narrative games, you know, that are more like like branching novels. You know, where you might have something like, to a degree, Mass Effect, although that's the kind of the second thing we're going to get into, which is really a hybrid model.
Final Fantasy thing.
If you have Final Fantasy, you know, you'll have these things where you're, you know, it's highly engaging, highly narrative. It's kind of linear, but you're also making choices. You're going and you're kind of going about this, and you know, there's a lot of dialogue built into it. There's a lot of scripting. Sometimes there's branching, but for the most part, you know, it's beginning, middle, and ends. And you can still see this in such works that Gone Home as an example. If anybody's played that, it's kind of disparagingly called a walking simulator. And, you know, because there isn't a ton of gameplay in it, but that's not really the point of it. It's really about getting you to think about a narrative from a different perspective. And then you do have wildly branching narratives, where you'll have something where you start in one spot, and depending on the choices, you'll go wildly in different areas. And, you know, there are exceptions to this. And you know, Mass Effect is as an example. It's kind of hybrid. There are multiple endings, but really you're kind of going on this basic journey. What's hard about this, it's a two-part process. The first part is that video games are still in their infancy as a medium of a narrative and storytelling. You know, it's, you know, really narratives in video games have existed for about 40 years, a little bit before that, but for about that span of time. And if you look at, film or television, it took them decades before they were able to have a vernacular and, a style by which they could tell things. And there were high points, obviously. You can look to the 20s and 30s in cinema and the 70s and 80s in television to see really good stuff, as you can see it here. But it's still, people are still kind of learning the ropes, the best ways to tell it. And that is tied into the second part, that, you have to make every story feel like its equivalent. You have to make, if you make this one choice, that has to have the same emotional weight as if you made the other choice. Because if you don't, then you're going to have a big group of people who feel like it's wildly disparate. The tone is all over the place. Who are these characters? It is possible to do it, but the more that one branches, the more expensive that becomes. Because then you have to code for all of these different experiences, or you kind of have to beat people back onto the path, a la a choose your own adventure. Part of the fun of the choose your own adventure was that you make one choice and you're lost in a black hole for forever. You make another choice and you might wind up in a tiger pit, and there's a lot of fun to that. But other times, this is kind of why Bandersnatch, for as popular as it was, it kind of received mixed reviews in some circles. I think it did a lot very well, but because it felt so nihilistic and it felt like if you didn't make the right choice, you were kind of knocked back for it. Whereas gaming is about agency and free will and making the choices and seeing those choices reflected in the story. And if they're not, then it's very, very passive. And the average gamer might be like, well, why don't I just read a book or watch a movie? There has to be some level of interactivity and agency there. Actually, in my podcast, we're going on we're on an arc right now about interactive story structure and thinking about these things, thinking about the differences and the subtle differences that make up a big choice, a big difference later on. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, and brought up a whole bunch more. So thank you for that. And I'm going to take some time to chew on that for a little bit. And shout out Troy. Thank you for admitting that you don't know how to use masks, because I don't either. So it kind of felt good to know that some of the pros are just like, I don't know how to do that either. So thanks.
God, the amount of things I don't know in Photoshop is like mountains of stuff I don't know.
We all wear masks, metaphorically speaking.
Steele,
nice reference.
You're talking about story of story structure and movement in games and stuff. It immediately brought to mind like the Telltale game stuff, and because it seemed to handle that kind of pretty well. I don't think they're a thing anymore, but I know that they did a bunch of Walking Dead and they had done a Batman and stuff, and those very limited and linear, but it didn't feel linear even though it was. But it was more about the story than shooting a zombie in the fucking head. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. So for those, those are a great example of what's called string of pearls, where you have a singular point that everybody it would deal with, and then the story goes out depending on your choices, and then it comes back in again, and you deal with the same choices. So as an example, the Batman series, which I think actually was there was some not a perfect game series, but it was a lot of fun. I liked the mechanic where you could choose whether to deal with a problem as Bruce Wayne or as Batman, which I thought was an interesting idea that hadn't really been explored, because it would have been hard to do in other media. But in video games, it made a lot of sense. Your choice changes the story in some kind of way. So in that, you're always gonna the villain is always going to remain the same. You're always going to confront the villain at the end. But in each episode, there's one or two big choices that you make, or things that you interact with, that do affect the broader story proper. And so that was always what was kind of intriguing to me. And interestingly, if one plays through, you can see how almost everybody else reacts. So 60% of people chose to save Catwoman over Two-Face, or 35% of people decided to let the Joker go. And that's always kind of interesting to see how your choices are reflected or not reflected in pop culture. So Telltale did go bankrupt. There were some questionable business decisions there. They kept licensing properties. They did Borderlands. They were doing a Guardians of the Galaxy, and they were trying to kind of, I won't say dig themselves out of a hole, but it cost a lot of money to do this, and they just kept trying to push it. Eventually, it collapsed. Although the assets have been bought, and it looks like they're going to be trying to make more games now. But the most successful of those games were those where when you played it through the first time, it felt like your choices mattered. The Walking Dead series was very much like that. If you play it through again, you will see that it is kind of putting you on a linear path, but it has to feel real that first time. A majority of gamers do not finish a game that they buy. I was shocked by this when we entered with Electronic Arts into a project with them. Their number was 47% of gamers finish a title that they purchased, not 100%, just finish it. And they said of that 47%, about a quarter will come back and play it again. So their push was like their first experience has to be as amazing as possible so they can feel like it feels real and it feels good, because most of them are coming back. And so that, the best of those Telltale games work the first time very well. If you go back a second time, not quite so well. But that's not the design purpose. The design purpose is to feel fulfilling, that initial go around. And I think they do. The Wolf Among Us is a great example of that. I would recommend that for, based in Fables, great prequel to the series. And it does a really good job of pulling in kind of disparate characters, keeping them in the voice, and making it seem like you have you have some effect in the story world, when of course you don't, because the first volumes have already come out. But it works pretty well. I would recommend that series.
I think the first time I ever felt like choices I was making in a game story wise would probably have been like was it Linus Fable?
Yeah.
First Fable stuff, like it felt like this, like the story was really good, and it felt like your choices mattered, and you could see like everything going, and then it just seemed to kind of morph from there, and more people were kind of latching onto that kind of idea and stuff.
Yeah, the technology got good enough that you could do that. It's so hard to tell. The example I always use, there's an image of, if you take any screenshot of the Legend of Zelda, the NES version, it takes up more memory, more space on your computer than the entire game of the Legend of Zelda when it came out. 64 kilobytes, and they were able to tell that. There just wasn't the space to be able to tell a complex story or branches or anything like that. It's why the choices had to be so clear. Rescue the princess, get the gold, get the most points. There was no other way to tell a story.
Very cool.
We're running low on time. We got about 20 minutes left, so let's hit up these last two questions here. Kevin, or I think Sam was next. He just dropped. What up, Sam? Did you have a question? You had your hand up.
Yeah, I did. My connection has been flaking out on me.
Right, I saw.
But for Steele, you're talking about like all these different plot elements and hundreds of people you have involved. I really want to know, like, how do you marshal all those details? Like, what do you use, like a big database of plot points and characters and where they are and when, or do you just have like a giant binder full of stuff that everyone has to keep reading? How do you guys manage it?
Yeah. So in good game development, there is a design document of some sort, which is a very basic outline. It would be like considered like a treatment for a screenplay, not the entire thing, but it's like, this is what this game is going to be like. These are the basic mechanics. This is the business propositions for it. This is the demographic. This is the tone, the feel, a little bit on the story. And the reason it's a treatment or an outline is because feature creep, as it's known, where people just keep putting more stuff into a game until it gets bloated and it collapses, or the people just forget to focus on what makes that title unique. It's very, very real. It happens all the time. It happens with $100 million games. Cyberpunk, which just came out, as an example of that, just overstuffed, and because of that, like the basic features of the game kind of got tossed by the wayside, and so you wind up with game-breaking bugs and massive fan backlash on that kind of stuff. So it's good to have that initial vision for what a title should be. Some people poo-poo it because it's very businessy, but I do think it does a very good job as working as an anchor, so that everybody kind of knows what they're working on from a broad perspective. Then within that, it's now pretty much moved to the digital side. There used to be binders. It just used to be binders of stuff, binders of assets, and you'd have weekly meetings to go over progress, go over milestones. Milestones are still very much a part of it. You have to certain mechanics, certain levels, certain
development
looks.
or gameplay milestones.
Both. It really depends on the production. You know, as I won't say which game I worked on, but we were not informed. The narrative team was not informed that there were going to be loot boxes in the game until we actually bought the game, or whether we received copies of it. So sometimes sometimes for nefarious purposes and sometimes for non-nefarious purposes, it's just very, very siloed. And so it's very much like a military regime where you have a couple people up top and they've got lieutenants underneath and they've got people underneath them, and then they've got the rank and file underneath that. And so it's really up to the top team to be able to wrangle all of that. And so you will probably have, very much like animation, you'll have people who are doing character design and character animation, walk animation, explosions. You'll have cutscenes. You'll have people who are doing straight scripting for like barking. It's called, like when you talk to a random person on the street and they just give you a single line back, that's a bark. And then other people are involved in the actual narrative design and the branching dialogue and all of this at the same time, while the design for these various elements are going on. And so in the best case, kind of like in a comic, it's like, you scratch my back, I scratch yours. You have the animators, the gameplay designers, and the writers and the narrative designers. They're all kind of working in tandem to try to get the best out of a segment, to get the best out of a sequence, to get the best out of a level, to get the best out of whatever discrete unit they're working on. Other times it's, very dictatorial, and you get someone, principally a game designer, because that's the medium, who is going to kind of force something into it, and you wind up with something that doesn't quite work. An example that I can use, because they admitted to it, was Uncharted 3, which is really just a series of set pieces that are tied together very loosely by a plot. If you look at the first two Uncharted, the plot and the gameplay go together pretty well. It's not the most gameplay intensive game ever, but the stories are engaging, and the gameplay is fun, and they all kind of work together. And they have these gigantic set pieces, but they feel like they're a part of the game. Whereas in Uncharted 3, they even the producers, they admitted, it's just an excuse for us to throw somebody in a tanker ship and have it flip over a bunch of times. It doesn't have anything to do with the story, but who really cares? And when you hear that, you kind of see like, not every game needs to have a narrative, but if you're going to have it, there should be something that kind of ties this stuff together. So, it's kind of like having a good general. A good general has a very good broad view of the battlefield, and they have people underneath them who can kind of subdivide, and people underneath them, so that there is this direct structure. And if you don't have that, I would recommend, if anybody's interested in writing or game design, to read Jason Schreier's piece on Anthem, and about how that production kind of collapsed. And it's very much that, because there was no there's no clarity as to how that would be put together. But the pragmatic answer is, it's almost all online now. People can go and check out the assets, check out the script, check out the elements, be it in the form of like a Monday.com or a Monday app, or just an internal Discord or Slack or what have you.
Okay. Do you have like a big like content management, SharePoint, or a data table or something where you keep everything that's indexed, so you can make sure you can check like all the plot pieces of what's happening on an island, or some level or something, so people are coordinated. But you made an interesting point. I was wondering if you find the detail management is more relationship based or process based, or does it go in between?
It does go in between, but it's really relationship based.
Okay.
It's based. People say the process, it's binary code. It's got to be like this, but everybody knows it's relationship based. Okay,
I know. Previous life, I worked in construction management, so that was also very relationship based. So it was always kind of maddening, because you didn't know who you needed to talk to until you knew who you needed to talk to.
Right. I will say it's so much better now, because the worst time to create it, to come up in the industry, was in the early aughts when I was coming up, because it was, you didn't have the tools to create a game on your own, but it wasn't like you could create a game that was going to sell like you could in in the old like Muds and like Zork and things, where you could like you and two people could create a game together and just throw it onto the floppy disk, or even like a Lucasfilm game. Like one could create something like that. Maybe not to that kind of level, but you could do it. Now with Game Maker and Unity and Udemy and all of these different Unreal, with all of these different engines, it's never been easier to get involved. And what people care about is, kind of like a movie, Hollywood's terrible, but all they care about is money. All they care about is execution. If you can execute or you can make money, that's all they care about.
I've found I have certain material needs. No, thanks. I'm wondering, we've got a couple fan projects going on that have massive plot and data management associated with them. Mm-hmm. And I'm kind of in the place of helping manage those pieces. We have a project to recreate Alan Moore's Twilight of the Superheroes, and working out how people will pick up plot pieces, how we get all these disparate plot pieces to fit together around the framework that Alan Moore provided in his pitch. Managing those data bits so that we get them and we get all the plots, because it's all individual writers, individual artists that are working on their own bit, and wrangle them into the script so it makes a little bit of sense. So I'm just wondering, like, how you do that. It's kind of the same.
Yeah. In brief, because I'd be thrilled to talk about this offline, because we've worked in similar structures like this before. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. I thought you were done. I
was done. My internet connection glitched on me.
Okay. So figure out, so it's called a goal reward scenario. You have to create a goal for these individuals, and then you reward them for fulfilling it. And that sounds kind of simple, but it's thinking about what they desire out of it. You might break it down into an archetype. Is this person creating this story because they want to get famous? Is it because they just love the work? Is it because they love the community? Figuring out what these people want, and then, kind of individualizing the reward structure for that so that they can self-manage, or so that there's some way that they can check in and you can check in on their progress and how it's going, so that there is a more clear step-by-step function, so that you don't have someone turn in an 80,000 word tome when you really only needed 1,000 word, a short story or like a plot spring or something like that. The more you can make it clear, the better it will be. And so having that step-by-step function and making sure that when they get something, when they hit it right, they get rewarded for that. That's a clear signal that they have done right. Here, congratulations. Now here's the next piece, which is essentially a quest tree that you would find in an RPG. So it might be like check in on Monday for updates. You check in, you get 10 experience points. Finish your outline by Tuesday, 10 experience points. Wednesday, give us the first draft, 10 experience. This is just kind of an example. And then on Friday, if you hit all those things, 50 experience points is worth the level up. It's worth, getting the next assignment. It's worth doing something. There's some kind of, leveling up system where you can kind of track people around that. You might not necessarily want to create a code that codifies that, but, finding ways that people can self-manage and self-track is going to be
I may not be able to help it at this point with my OCD. Okay, I think you gave me a lot of good ideas. I took down some notes. I'm going to see when I get back to that project, after I knock a couple more things off and all the Twilight of the Superheroes people stop wondering if it's dead or not. Mm-hmm. I will probably find a halfway point between a coded situation and a relationship-based situation.
Yeah.
So thanks for your insight there.
Absolutely. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much, Sam. Yeah, as we round out things here tonight, we've got one more question, again, from Kevin, Tough Stuff Delgado. What's up, dude?
Hey, man, how's it going? So, I'm an independent publisher. I've been doing this for a couple of years. What I want to do is translate my properties, my IPs into, other media outlets. So in the past, I have pitched to Netflix. I've written a pilot. I've done outlines. I've done a bunch of like that kind of stuff. It's not really my strong suit. I did learn from that, like how to sell and kind of brand and figure out how to make like my latest comic is done way better than like the last 6 I did. Okay. So I'm learning how to like shorten my pitch, catch attention better, sell to people that don't even buy comics. Like I just came from a giant festival this afternoon, sold a bunch of books to people that I know I didn't know them personally. I don't know what their background is, but they saw what I had, they came, picked it up. At any rate, so what I'm trying to do is like what's the best route for someone that's in my shoes to kind of like get to that next level? Like I said, I know writing's not, my strong suit as far as like writing a screenplay or something like that will go, but like I know I have something, and I have something that like people like respond to and enjoy. So it's there, but like, I'm in Buffalo, go Bills. So yeah, it's just like what can I do from where I'm at?
So the ultimate goal that any creative wants is when you're starting out, you go to the monkeys, and when you succeed, the monkeys come to you. What you're looking for is for people to approach you for that next step. That you want them to come to you because like, hey, we really like this idea. Hey, we want to take this to the next level. Hey, yada yada yada. And there are I'm going to give some practical advice and some pragmatic advice. The first is to focus on your craft, to continue to focus and hone on the work. In the same way that if you're trying to attract a partner, you got to still put in all the daily stuff that you would otherwise, while still trying to get to that end goal. Because a lot of people take their eyes off the ball. A lot of people take their eyes off the ball. And if you can continue to focus on your craft, even as things are, sometimes don't work out, you'll continue to find ways to succeed. The example that I use, Brian Michael Bendis, he tried to sell Torso as a screenplay, and he was, he'd had success in the comic book industry. He'd written screenplays, he'd written scripts, and he couldn't make that work. He couldn't get it off the ground. George Lucas, famously failed 27 times before he got Star Wars picked up. J.K. Rowling couldn't find a publisher for Harry Potter. If you know what you've got is good, you've got to continue to focus and continue to create that and work on that as you're going through. Because if you just stop, or if you're looking for someone to come and save you, it's never going to happen. That's a little cold. I'm sorry if that is a little cold. I don't mean it as. I just want to say that, if there's ever trouble in paradise, if things are kind of not quite clicking, it happens to everybody. I'm doing quite well for myself right now, but I'm pitching 3 pilots right now concurrently. One's just got optioned, and but I just got turned down for a screenplay festival for another project, and it's always disheartening, but it's like, you just got to keep working, keep moving on. From a pragmatic perspective, it's obviously finding yourself as a brand, finding what you can do, reaching out and surrounding yourself with doers, collaborating in a big way. I mean, this is something that I talk to people about all the time. I've got young artists or young creators, and they want to create a Kickstarter or something. And I say, join forces, do an anthology, pool your social media pool together. Because if you each have 2,000 followers and just 5 of you, that's 10,000 people. You have a much better shot of reaching new customers, reaching new voices, and succeeding in that way than if you try to do it disparately. And then the other thing is to find ways to kind of push a little bit, to separate yourself from the crowd. One example with Noelle Stevenson with Lumberjanes, that book, it did well, but it was never, never sold 30, 40,000 copies a month. She just kept in touch with her fan base, made sure that they felt special, because when things are starting out, that's the greatest strength. Disney was divorced from the fan base of Pirates of the Caribbean. They had no idea why people liked that. It's one of the reasons why Starlight Runner was brought on. One of the reasons we were brought on by Microsoft for Halo was because Microsoft, they didn't have a finger on the pulse. As an indie creator, as an indie publisher, you have a direct line to people to hear what they want, see what they want, what they like about your work. And those people, for better or worse, are going to be honest with you. And, the more that you can create that, the more that you're going to foster a fan base that, that will come with you no matter where you go. And that's kind of the story of Issa Rae. She started out, you can find her original videos. They're still on YouTube. They've got a couple hundred hits. They're not that great, but she continued to create. She continued to speak to her audience. And when HBO came calling, she was able to dictate terms a little bit because she had built up that fan base. And they weren't just a fan base. They just like her work. They were an activated fan base. The HBO knew that if she created a show for them, and she went out, she'd go the extra mile, and B, those fans would get HBO for her, which is what HBO wants. Well, at least what they did. The model's changing now. So those are a few things to do. I'm sure if you're an indie publisher, I'm sure you're trying to do as much podcasting and reaching out to people and cross promotion and all that. So you kind of know all the pragmatic tips on that end, but leverage your fan base. Make sure that it's not leveraging. Make sure you're speaking with your fans. Make sure that you're giving them what they want, going that extra mile. Continuing to focus on your process and taking a crack when you can. Finding I tend to find that middling, medium-sized film festivals, medium-sized television festivals tend to be a much better bang for your buck than trying to get into Sundance or Telluride or any of these other places. You're just a small fish in a big pond there. And unless you're a name, unless you've got a hot property, it's going to be hard to differentiate yourself. Whereas something that's in the middle ground, they're going to have a few big stars, but mostly it's going to be people who are kind of like you. And they're going to be all looking to collaborate. Everybody's trying to get to the next level. And, you might not be the right person at that moment, but if you make a good impression, you might wind up with something, kind of a small anecdote. I had a colleague who created a short film that she was pitching in Miami at a film festival down there. And her brilliant insight was that instead of just giving keychains or posters to people on the street, she gave out mini sunscreen bottles to everybody with the branding of the film on that and the date of the screening. And she sold out. And because she sold out, there was all this energy in the room, and she got a meeting with somebody, and that gig didn't turn out great, but that next meeting got her another gig on another project, and now she's doing cinematography on a Netflix show. It's always thinking about that relationship as an ongoing thing, a living beast, and thinking not just about selling in the room, but selling yourself as a creator. Any particular project can hit or may not hit. But you as a creator, if you're continuing to create and continue to look and continuing to build, that's your value as an artist. That's your value as a publisher, because there's going to be something next down the road. You might strike out now. That's also something for people who want to get into screenwriting or want to write pilots, to never just have one script, to have multiple scripts ready to go, to wait until you have multiple scripts, because that first script that you have, you might walk into that room and through no fault of your own, they already have a script like that in development, or they just something like that just literally bombed the week before. That happened to a colleague of mine. He had this great idea. It's a really good script, but I won't say the film, but it did star Ryan Reynolds, and it just completely bombed. And no producer would touch that script after that, because not through any faults, but just no one wanted it. But he had other stuff in the pipeline, so he was able to continue to work on that. So that's another piece, to have multiple things ready to go and to pitch, because you never know when you're walking into a situation where the next thing is the back of the slate piece for you.
Thanks, man.
It's glad to help.
Wow. Thanks, Steele. Thanks, Brett. So much information. So we really covered like a huge spread of our creativity and like the way we create and what we create, how we create it. And I don't know. I just really enjoyed like where everyone came from today. I'm so happy that everyone came. Anything else anyone wants to say? Craig, Ray, Rick, any closing? Here's all Steele's links here in the thing. I also put Brett's Patreon in there. If you scroll up a little bit, I'll put it again. Yeah. And
thanks for coming out. I learned a lot. Great talking to you guys. And thanks for everyone for showing up. Shout out to Troy for showing up. Nice seeing
Yeah.
you again.
Thanks for showing up. I'm glad this is recorded because I'm gonna have to. There's so much stuff I'm gonna have to like decompress it and put in components. It's
Yeah.
good. Thank you.
Yeah,
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you so much, Steele. Thank you so much, Brett. And thank
Yeah,
you, Troy,
Brett,
for
thanks.
coming back on too.
Yeah, man.
No, it's cool. It's good checking out this stuff. You guys get so much good stuff and it's fun. I just sitting here drawing, listening away, and learning stuff. You know, never
Perfect,
stop
man.
learning.
Yeah.
Never stop. Never stop. Never stopping, as the Lonely Island so succinctly put it. All right, y'all. Thank you so much. Cartoonist Kayfabe, ringside seats, Comix Symposium for another week. Just remember, don't just read more comics, be more comics. All right, y'all. Until next week. Until next month, actually.
Next week. What do you?
Next week.